You're listening to the Balanced Educator Podcast, episode number 77.
Welcome to the Balanced Educator. We're your hosts, Kaylee
and Josiane from EduCalm. Our intention is to equip and empower you to feel more calm, balanced, and joyful in all aspects of your life. Hello, and welcome to the Balanced Educator Podcast. We're so happy you're here. And today we are continuing with our 5-part series all about avoiding teacher burnout. We talked about, help me on this here, habits so far, thoughts, emotions, and today we are tackling perspective. So shifting our perspective to feel more calm, balanced, and joyful in and out of the classroom. But before we get started, we would like to share with you all about Free Label.
Free Label is one of our favorite brands.
Ever.
Yeah, we literally live in them. There's almost never a day that I'm not wearing a piece from Free Label because their clothes are so comfortable, so well made, such high quality that they last forever, and so sustainable. So not only are you buying less clothes because you're buying better clothes that last longer, but Free Label produces their clothing in such a sustainable way.
In small batches.
Yes.
And like everything, all of their fabrics are manufactured in Toronto. So they have control over the quality, and it allows them to track like the footprint that they're leaving. So amazing.
Yeah, not only is the fabric manufactured in Canada, but everything's also sewn in Canada. And yeah, smaller footprint, sustainable fabrics, high quality, so you need less, and we highly recommend it.
And their August line, their fall line, is absolutely amazing. And I'm sure it's going to run out very quickly.
Yes, that's one thing, guys. With Free Label, they only produce small batches so that they don't have extras that end up in the landfill. So that means that their stuff sells out fast. So you definitely have to keep an eye on their Instagram. And if you want to check out all their beautiful pieces, go to educalm.com/free label. So that's educalm.com/free FREE label LABEL.
That's fun. All right, let's get into the show.
Yeah.
Tell me, how can we shift our perspective?
So first thing that we have to talk about is that our perspective is our learned way of looking at the world and looking at specific situations. So things have happened to us in the past. We've had experiences in the past that taught our brain, oh, this is how this sort of thing plays out. This is how you should feel about this. This is bad or this is good. So each person's perspective is completely unique. There's no two people that are going to have the same perspective because everyone has different past experiences. So that means that our perspective is malleable. We can change our perspective. And our perspective, the way that we look at a situation, affects how we feel about it and how we act in that situation.
And that's why we're talking about perspective to avoid teacher burnout.
Yes.
Because it's our choice to decide how we want to see something, how we want to perceive a situation in the classroom or outside the classroom.
Exactly. And the beautiful thing is if we're perceiving things in a way that are not making us feel good right now, we can recognize that, and we do have the power to shift our perspective.
I've got the power.
So we're going to get back into the habit loop, kind of bringing this back to what we've been talking about.
Are you tired of hearing it yet?
We know that repetition is very key
Yes.
for learning, which is why we are repeating this in all 5 of these episodes. So this habit loop, I learned a lot about habits from the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. I highly recommend it.
We will link to it in the show notes at podcast.educalm.com.
Perfect. So the 4 steps of the habit loop are cue, craving, response, reward. Cue, craving, response, reward.
We can make
Cue,
a song out of
craving,
it. Apparently we're
response, reward.
feeling a little dancey today. I don't know.
So there's a cue, that's the situation we're in or the emotion we're feeling, gives us a craving. So we crave to shift whatever state we're in to a new state. The response is the action we take or the thought that we think to help us to shift our perspective. And then the reward is how we feel after having taken that action. And the reward also informs if we should do this again in the future. So that action that I just took, did it help me feel better? If so, I'm going to do this again in the future. So your brain learns, ooh, this is good. Let's stick with this habit loop. Or you have a negative situation afterwards. The reward isn't good. And so your brain goes, let's not do this again. It learns from your mistakes. It learns from your successes. So the perspective that we take is the response in this habit loop. It's the thoughts that we think, the side that we take, the beliefs that we have that create kind of our emotional state in that situation. So let's put this into an example. Now,
The old example.
So really great example is parent-teacher meetings. I know when I first started teaching, parent-teacher meetings caused me so much anxiety.
Yes.
Oh my God, I was so worried.
There has been a lot of shifting in the parent-teacher meeting perspective over the years, hasn't there?
Oh, big time. I went from dreading it to actually enjoying it. So we'll talk about how we can shift that perspective from dread to enjoyment with this example. So the situation is you have parent-teacher meetings coming up, and the cue is, okay, so parent-teacher meetings coming up, all of a sudden you start feeling anxious, worried, or stressed. Now,
or like you said, dread.
Yes, or dreading it. Now, the reason you start really quickly feeling these emotions is actually a learned response. It's because of things that you've thought in the past or experiences that you've had in the past that make you think that something's not going to go right here.
Or sometimes even often it's just stories you've heard.
Yes.
You know, when that other teacher comes into the classroom and tells you that they had this horrible experience one time at parent-teacher meetings and
Yes. I remember when I first started teaching, there was like so much emphasis on documenting everything. So like I felt very on guard, like, ooh, the parents are going to come in here like ready to argue with me about something, and I'm going to have to prove my side of the story. And that was the perspective that I had because that's what I had been taught. So I was just expecting it to go that way. And well, lo and behold, of course it went that way because that's what I was expecting.
You have to sometimes choose not to hang on to stories that we hear from other teachers sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, I'm going off topic here. So let's get back on this. The cue.
So the cue is we're feeling anxious, worried, stressed. We're feeling those big emotions. So the craving is, well, I don't want this. I don't want these big emotions. And also I want this to go well. So my craving is that whatever actions I take in these parent-teacher meetings are going to have a positive result, right? So now the response is, right off the bat, probably you start getting into this thought loop of thinking of all the things that could go wrong, thinking of what you need to do to avoid those things. And you start kind of going down this thought rabbit hole.
Like perpetuating the anxiety.
Yes. So we learned in last week's episode that thoughts create our emotions. And so when we're thinking and imagining all the things that could go wrong, we're actually creating more emotions of stress in our body. So it's perpetuating this feedback loop of stress and worry and anxiety. Now, the funny thing is, if our response is overthinking it and thinking of all the things that could go wrong and how we would avoid it, we do feel a sense of reward out of it. Our brain goes, okay, I'm protecting myself. You feel a little bit more in control because you feel like you're prepared for anything that could go wrong. Now, having this thought loop that's giving you the perspective of parent-teacher meetings are bad, It's something to be worried about. That becomes your belief about parent-teacher meetings. Now, what we want to do here is we want to shift that perspective, right? Parent-teacher meetings can be an awesome thing.
And should be.
And
it should be a celebration.
Exactly. And I definitely remember kind of that shift that I had when I was feeling anxious and I went, whoa, what are the thoughts I'm having here? And can I take on a new perspective? What if I look at this in a new way? Like, what is the perspective that the parents are coming in with?
Yeah, Kate, let's go through the habit loop with this idea in mind.
Sounds good. So parent-teacher meetings are coming up. You start feeling anxious. That's the cue. The craving, you want it to go well. So the response is, so this is what we want to change, is our response to that craving of it going well. So what if our response is thinking of the parents in a compassionate way? So they aren't your enemy. They're your teammate.
Yeah.
Those parents are coming in and they want the best for their children.
You all want the best for their children.
Exactly. So instead of thinking of it as something that's like a negative interaction, thinking of it as, hey, we finally get the chance to figure out how we can do our best for this child, working together as a team.
Yes.
Or, and this was something that helped me to shift my perspective because I wasn't a parent, I'm not a parent, and wasn't at the time. So I hadn't really thought of like the perspective of the parents that are coming in. But I once had a parent tell me that they were very worried about parent-teacher because they didn't want me to think that they were a bad teacher. And here I was on the other side. Or sorry, a bad parent. Yeah. They didn't want me to think they were a bad parent. Whereas on my side, I was thinking the same thing. Well, I don't want the parents to think I'm a bad teacher for some reason. So we both were going into it just wanting to like show our best selves. And that was making both of us worried.
For no reason.
For no reason. Exactly. So how can we shift our perspective from whatever it is that we're thinking that's causing us negativity and into something better? So if you're having a hard time shifting your perspective on any situation, there's like 3 questions that we like to ask ourselves. One of them is, how would past me look at this situation? How would future me look at this situation? So a lot of times when we're really worried about something, in the moment, it feels huge. And then you think in 10 years from now, what will I think about this? And you realize I'll probably completely have forgotten about this in 10 years.
It'll seem so like nothing.
Yeah. Then it helps to bring your perspective into, oh, this isn't that big of a deal. Like this isn't life or death like my brain wants to tell me it is.
Yes. Oh, the brain.
Yeah. And then the third question is, how would someone that I admire look at this? Or someone that I know that tends to have a different perspective than me. So I love to think to myself, how would Josiane look at this situation? Or yeah. Or how would, a famous person, or like how would Oprah look at this?
Yeah, like someone you really admire.
Yeah.
That's up on a pedestal.
Yeah.
Obviously that's me to you, right?
Of course.
I'm totally kidding. Okay. Moving on.
Or if you are having a hard time shifting your perspective on your own, can you talk to someone that you know has a different perspective? So, if you go to talk to someone that has the same perspective, you're just going to be perpetuating that same perspective. But if you go to talk to someone that you know is going to respond differently than you, just be open to their thoughts on it and ask them what they think about it. And it can help you to see and remember that, oh yeah, there's many different ways to look at one situation.
We do this for each other all the time.
All the time.
Coming to each other with a little problem of how we're seeing something. And it's like, Kate, what do you think of this?
Yeah.
And whether I agree with you or not, like it opens up my eyes to like, okay, yeah, there is another perspective.
Yeah. Or we'll purposely play devil's advocate to each other just to help us get each other out of the habit of thinking we've been in.
Yes. It's also nice to talk to someone else because that person isn't to someone who isn't emotionally attached to the situation really helps.
Yes. Yes. And someone that isn't just going to be on your side and be like, yeah, you're totally right. This person was in the wrong and you were in the right. If you can talk to someone that's going to help you to think in a new way. So choose your confidant wisely.
That's the takeaway of the episode. I'm just kidding.
So what we're trying to do here is to look at the situation in a new way so that we can start teaching our brain to have a different response. Now, remember, our brain is just learning from past experience and deciding what beliefs or perspectives to hold on to. So if we play with a new response to our craving of feeling better, feeling more in control of this situation, and we recognize that this new perspective actually makes us feel better, then our brain's going to go, oh, this is a better new perspective. Maybe I'm going to take this next time instead of that old perspective that wasn't serving me.
It takes practice.
It does. It does. Because remember, all of our responses are learned responses. Our brain has developed to automatically take that opinion and that response.
And the brain, again, wants to take the easiest path that will use the least amount of energy.
Yes.
So it's a training your brain situation to see this see this differently.
Exactly. So coming back to the model, you have the cue, you're feeling anxious, you have the craving, you want it to go well. Now, the response is what we're shifting here. We're just inserting a new response that it'll hopefully give us the reward that we've been looking for all along. That reward of feeling a little bit more in control or feeling more calm or feeling happier. So you can insert a new response, try out new responses by shifting your perspective. How can I look at this in a new way? How can I act on this in a new way? How can I perceive this in a new way and believe something new so that I have new emotions surrounding this situation?
Which will help to stay out of teacher or avoid teacher burnout.
Yeah, exactly. So practicing paying attention to our thoughts, our emotions, our perspectives, so helpful to have a mindfulness practice to do this. When we take the time to set a timer for 5 minutes, just so that we can start paying attention to our habits of thinking, feeling, and perceiving, it goes such a long way in helping us to shift out of these habit loops that we're in that aren't serving us. Now, how could we then take this into the classroom and help our students to learn this as well?
We can do exactly the same thing with them. We can get them to start paying attention to their perception, to their perspectives. Now, this is very difficult for kids, though. This takes a lot of teaching, explicit teaching. Mm-hmm. And that's because their brains aren't there yet to understand that other people have other perspectives. So do you want to talk about a little bit about that?
Yeah. So like in the brain development, when the child is younger, they actually literally haven't developed that part of their brain that allows them to take on a new perspective and understand that people have different thoughts than we have.
Yeah, we were joking before we recorded this episode because when I was a little kid, I asked my mom if she could hear my thoughts. Hi, Mom. Yeah. She still brings that story up all the time. Like, yeah.
But I think actually all of us can relate back to a story, that moment in our development where we recognize that people thought of things differently.
Or even had thoughts.
Yeah, or even had thoughts. And that they couldn't hear our own thoughts. But we can help children to develop this empathy piece, because empathy comes and compassion comes with being able to see someone else's perspective and understand that they have a different perspective.
And simple ways that we can infuse this, of course, there's the mindfulness practice where they're recognizing their thoughts, but it's also through conversation. So say you have two students that are, had a moment, some sort of disagreement. And so you're talking to the one student and they're telling you, I don't know why they did that, or whatever, whatever kids will say in that moment. And we can ask them as teachers, well, why do you think that they did that? Or, something around perspective. I don't know. Do you have examples specifically of? Nothing is coming to mind right now. So,
well, when I was teaching grade 5 this past year, this happened a lot, like pretty much every recess.
Yeah, it's pretty typical.
Students coming in, and I mean, my first step was, okay, let's do some deep breathing together. So we would do 5-finger breathing before we even got into it.
That's great.
Oftentimes they would just calm down enough and get out of their habit of thinking to be like, okay, I'm fine. We can move on. But sometimes
it's a good old trick.
Yeah. Sometimes if the breathing wasn't enough for them to realize that their problem wasn't that big of a problem, they can just move on. I would just probe a lot to get them to think of how their actions were perceived by the other person, and also think of the motivations of the other person for why they did that. So, I would say if one student was upset that their friend didn't want to play with them at recess, for example. Okay. Well, why do you think that they didn't want to play with you at recess? And it was hard for them. Definitely hard to understand why. Well, they don't like me, or they're mad at me, or something like that. But did you notice how they were feeling today? Did it seem like they were in a good mood today?
Like just digging
deeper. Yeah. And I did notice that they were like kind of upset today. Okay. Why do you think that they were feeling upset? And kind of dig deep so that they can understand the headspace that other person was in, and then say, once you get to the point that they're like, yeah, it seemed like they were having a hard day today and they weren't feeling bad or feeling well. And then you could say, well, when you're in a bad mood, do you always treat your friends really well? Oh no, sometimes you make mistakes when you're in a bad mood. Oh, maybe that's and just
developing the compassion.
Yeah.
There. Now, like we taught grade 5, both of us this year.
Mm-hmm.
This past year, but with a kindergarten or grade 1 student, the conversation probably won't go that way.
Yes.
But just even as the teacher, even though we may not get responses, just asking the questions in the first place, those perspective questions, may not do anything in that moment. But if we keep repeating this every time there's an issue, it might start to get them to open up to the idea that others have different thoughts and emotions and perspectives than they have, right?
Exactly.
So even though in their developmental state, they're not there yet to be able to think on that deeper level, it's still getting them going in that direction.
Yeah. Exactly. And then another way that we can explicitly teach it too, that I really love to do, is after our classroom mindfulness practice, we have a sharing circle after, or a morning meeting, and it gives us the opportunity to see what everyone's perspective is. And I would make a point of simply just highlighting the fact that we all had different perspectives. Like, oh, okay, so you found that after the mindfulness practice today, you felt really calm. And oh, you found that you're feeling tired. And oh, you found that you're feeling like it was really hard to sit still today and you didn't enjoy today's practice. Oh, okay, so we all did the same thing. We were in the same classroom. We were all doing the exact same activity, but we each had a different experience of that activity. Isn't that interesting? And just highlighting that as often as possible helps kids to understand that everyone has a different perspective.
I love that. Now, as mentioned, a mindfulness practice for the classroom is the perfect way to start getting kids involved in recognizing that they have a perspective and other students have different perspective and the teacher has a different perspective. And you can do that with our online classroom mindfulness program. It's bilingual, French and English, Educalm Classroom.
It's also it's also prep free. 0 prep, just throwing that in there.
Yeah, that's the best part, obviously. And you can check out the free trial at www.educalm.com, and that's EDUCALME. So what are we going to be talking about next week in our last episode of the 5-part series of Avoiding Burnout, Kaylee?
Next week, we're going to be talking about 10 self-care practices to be your best self in and out of the classroom. So we're going to talk about ways to really instill some practices to fill your cup first so that you can avoid burnout by really amping up those feel-good emotions on a regular basis.
It's going to be so much fun. It's going to be a fluffier, funner episode. I'm excited.
We will see you back here next week.
Have a great week.
Worry, stress, and anxiety are a reality in today's schools. When students are distracted, their brains aren't ready for learning. Getting them to calm down and focus can feel impossible. Don't feel helpless, frustrated, or overwhelmed any longer. Get Educalm Classroom, our online mindfulness program that's transforming classrooms and improving student wellness and learning. With Educalm Classroom, students and teachers learn concrete strategies and common vocabulary to manage emotions and behaviors. They both leave the classroom better equipped to overcome life's challenges. In your Educalm Classroom membership, you'll get a full year of ready-to-use audio, video, and printable mindfulness lessons for the classroom, plus access to a caring and supportive community of like-minded teachers. Try Educalm Classroom for free by going to www.educalm.com. Educalm is spelled EDUCALME. Thrive in a calm learning atmosphere.